So this is the scripted movie review project where I go back through my old archives, reread old book and movie reviews I've written over the years. This is a bit of an odd one. I was in Japan. I was living in Japan and I was in the video store and I was looking for something interesting to watch. And I came across these old movies about Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller. So they were both kind of on the shelf together. There was a Glenn Miller story, which came out in 1954 and stars James Stewart. And then there was the Benny Goodman story, which came out in 1956 and starred Steve Allen and Donna Reed. Okay, so Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman are both kind of big names associated with kind of the big band swing era of like the 1940s. I don't really know a lot about them. I mean, I recognize the name. Benny Goodman, I could tell you a few of the songs that his band has done, but I didn't really know anything about their lives. But I was interested, I'm a history buff, I kind of like old stuff, I like swing music, I don't know a lot about it, but I like it. So I rented both of those movies and I thought, maybe I could learn something about it. And then, both of these movies were just so boring that I decided to write a blog post about how boring they are. It was just, both of these movies, just nothing happened. I just thought it was interesting, especially, it was a bit on my mind because a lot of American biopics had been coming out around this time. And there was even an article in the Japan Times at the time. I forget which particular biopic they were reviewing, but they had an interesting little synopsis of it. They said, "Say what you will about the Hollywood biopic, but no matter how much they play with the truth, no matter how predictable they are in laying out a series of moments that make up a life, they are nothing if not democratic. For while the subject of biopics are invariably the super successful or talented, there's always this populist impulse to tear them down a little, to show the foibles, weaknesses, and darker impulses that make them more human, more like the rest of us." Now, I thought that was interesting, especially seeing these two biopics from the 1950s, the Glenn Miller story and the Benny Goodman story, because, boy, was there none of that. It's just kind of one success after another for both Benny Goodman and James Stewart. There's no drama, there's no kind of low point for the heroes or anything like that. It's just kind of bum, 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 success, 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 success. I was also, let me read what I wrote at the time. And, after complaining about how it's all success, everyone is squeaky clean. Everyone is on their best manners at all times, and both movies are essentially romance stories between the musicians and their one true love, June Allyson and Donna Reed, respectively. Both James Stewart and Steve Allen could easily have walked out of a 1950s sitcom, and both at times seem to be playing themselves more than the historical characters. Jimmy Stewart especially. You know how he is. He kind of appears the same in every movie he's in. And then I said, I'm no jazz expert, but my impression of the jazz scene during that period was that it had a seedy underbelly to it. But I'd be interested in the feedback of anyone who knows more than me. I'm probably wrong on that, I think. I don't know. At the time I wrote that, I was thinking, jazz was like the rock and roll of its day, right? So rock and roll, rock and roll was like sex and drugs and scandals and stuff like that. So I was thinking these kind of big band jazz musicians, even though they were back in the 1940s, because they were the popular music of the day, would have all these problems with sex and drugs and all this kind of stuff. In my defense, I think when I wrote this, 2005, this was kind of before Wikipedia was around, or at least before Wikipedia really came into its own. So it was a little bit harder to find detailed information on there. But I was just looking up both of these guys before filming this, Benny Goodman and Steve Miller, and there doesn't really appear to be much at all scandalous about their lives, at least on their Wikipedia bio. So maybe they were just squeaky clean, and there was kind of no good movies, no good scandals to make a movie out of. I don't know. At any rate, those movies, the Glenn Miller story and the Benny Goodman story, are interesting as timepieces from the 1950s, just in terms of how utterly boring they are. You could never make a movie like that nowadays.